Karibu tena mtazamaji, tunazungumzia changamoto ambazo zinakumba sekta ya maua. Ninaye afisa mkuu mtendaji wa Kenya Flower Council, Clement Tulezi. Tulezi, we spoke in length about the top flower farms dwindling. How do we then revive these top flower farms?
I think it's about just creating incentives, enough incentives for them to do business. Number one is, look at the whole area around, VAT refunds, for example. Our VAT refunds have been stuck with government for a long time, and we have lacked money, what I would call liquidity, to continue injecting into the business for a very long period of time. So it's about refunding that money as much as possible, or finding a different way in which we can be able to offset close to 100%. We have farms, big farms that are owned up to 2 billion Kenya shillings by the Kenyan government, and this money is not in circulation. So if those farms got that money back, then they can remain afloat, and they could also expand. On the other hand, we are also seeing, there is VAT on locally sold flowers. And it's not just because it's being sold locally, but it's being sold to other people who probably will export it. And removing that VAT then becomes really, really important for us to inject in, create enough incentives around this. So there are areas in which government can look at this, and depending on the size of the industry, decide, okay, what can we do for you? For example, we have always wanted to be part of the SEZ scheme. With this, then we can be cordoned off as a major sector to the extent that certain taxes that should apply to us do not apply, because we are basically an export. And the goodness is that we can be zoned easily, because we are found in clusters. Like if you go to Naivasha, you'll find a bigger Naivasha cluster. You go to Nakuru, you go to Nanyuki Timau, you go to Kajiado, you are maybe in Thika. So we can be zoned very, very easily and move to such a scheme, and which will be enough incentive for anyone who wants to come in and either invest or expansion. So there are practical things that can be done in a very short time that will just flip the coin, and it's easier for these farms to continue operating at optimum. As we see it, it is possible, it can be done. So it's just government, if they were to sit with us as operators, we'll give them much more ideas on how this can be done, because we have seen that it has worked for other sectors, it can also work for us.
And we can witness the comeback of Shah Karuturi.
Yes, they probably, even if it's not Shah, but those that are struggling can be stabilized within the shortest time possible. And we also have expansion of especially the bigger ones. Okay. The consolidation that is happening in the country is about the maturity of the industry. If you go to countries like Colombia, who are much older than us, you'll find that we have one company that is owning many farms. So the expansion is also good. So it's not just about how many people are coming in, but also how many are actually expanding. The size of the sector is not just on the number of 1, 2, 3 businesses, it's also the size of those companies. And we would want those who have 40 hectares in another 10 years, there could be 80 hectares, doubled up that. But it's possible that can happen with this kind of incentives.
Okay. The world is witnessing effects of climate change. How critical is it to the flower industry?
Climate change is real. Because we depend on a commodity called water. We irrigate every day. A typical farm, either you are growing on soil or you're growing on hydroponics, you will still irrigate. And therefore, water is critical. So anything that has an impact on the rainfall or how much water is underground has an immediate impact on our sector. And therefore, we are putting in place not just systems to be able to mitigate how much water is being used, but also reforestation. Many of the farms, if you go there, you'll find they have set aside a place or you have set aside some land where they are actually doing reforestation, because we know how important rain is. We know how important, temperatures, what we call, humidity also is to what we are growing. Mm-hmm. And therefore, we have to manage this in the most natural way possible. Mm-hmm. So systems are put in place, and that is why even us, when we certify, environment becomes an important thing. And if you were to flip the coin and look at basically an environment to a large extent, it has to do with climate change. And therefore, climate change becomes a real important thing that we want to tell a story someday, that we are among the sectors in Kenya that have paid big attention to climate change, and we can see tangible outcomes of the efforts that we have put in over a period of time. This is something that we want to start documenting from one farm to another and collectively as a sector, so that we can tell the story of where we have come from, the road we have traveled, and how we've been able to mitigate the challenges of climate change. So the discussions or conversations on climate change are really core and very close to our business every day. We urge all the farms to pay a lot of attention to this, because if we don't, 10 years, 30 years down the line, we'll not be able to be in this business when everything has dwindled that has something to do with climate change.
Okay. So we have, there are strict international standards, including the use of pesticides and environmental impact. How do then we tell these farmers to adhere to the regulations that are put in place?
We do not just look at regulations in Kenya, but we also look at regulation in the marketplace, because we try to match what has been licensed here in terms of pesticides, fungicides, and other chemicals, and matching it also with the requirements of the market. And this always goes into our certification. If there are certain chemicals you cannot use on the farm, there are certain quantities you cannot use on the farm. So this is part of what we check when we are doing our certification. But as Kenya Flower Council, we are also going a step further by doing an actual test, what would have called the, in the food safety world, they call it the, maximum residue levels. We actually sample across the farms that we certify, and we actually do carry out actual tests on those chemicals. Anyone who is not adhering to what is required here or required in the marketplace will be sanctioned. You cannot be certified if you are using something that is outside what is actually required, either here locally or in the marketplace. So these are things that we check much more often. Usually there is this story where people believe, oh, because we are growing in Africa, then we just use any kind of pesticides, any kind of chemicals. And it's an emotional issue. And a lot of times people don't know how to deal with it. But if you take a closer look at our sector, there's the sector 20 years ago and now, they're very, very different. The kind of pesticides that we're using are not the harsh ones. Yes, it's important that we can control certain pests using chemicals, but the kind of chemicals that we're using has to be those that are, are tolerable and are permitted within, the local environment and also the marketplace. So a lot of transformation has gone in, and if you are very keen to look precisely at what we are using today, a lot has changed over a long period of time. Okay. I don't think the discourse around what people say, the flower industry, cancer and whatever, I don't think it really holds water. It's quite an emotional thing than being very scientific. Very few people have actually gone into our sector and actually tested and proved some of those things. A lot of them are mere hearsays that do not have a scientific backing behind them. Because we do a lot of checks in the background to make sure that almost everyone is using what is required and what is permitted, both here and in the marketplace.
Okay. Thank you very much, Clement Tulezi, CEO Kenya Flower Council. Nashukuru sana if you understand a bit of Swahili.
Yes.
Asante sana mtazamaji kwa kutufuatilia. Tumekuwa na Clement Tulezi, CEO Kenya Flower Council, ambaye ametuelekeza sana kuhusiana na changamoto ambazo zinakumba sekta ya maua na vile vile kutupatia suluhu katika kila changamoto, kumaanisha kwamba sekta yetu siku zinazokuja basi ina nafasi kubwa sana ya kutamba na kutambariza katika soko la kimataifa. Asante sana. Jina langu ni Emmanuel Terer. Salia na Mwenyezi Mungu. Kumbuka tatimiza ndoto, tutafaulu sana.